I'm the youngest of two children. I have an older brother, Matt, and so there was sometimes the occasion where, during the day we would, be doing a good job or not so good job, our household duties. We had our little chore chart, things that we would want to do, and this, that. And I remember one day my brother, he had checked off all his chores that he was supposed to do, and he'd had a good day at school and all that. Meanwhile, for myself, I didn't do all my chores on time, and in fact, after school, I went to my friend John Branco's house, and his dad was doing some work on the roof, so there was a ladder up against the wall. John's like, "Hey, let's climb up to the roof." All right, so we climbed up on the roof, and I got in big trouble. So when I came home, my mom was all afraid for me, and so I didn't do my chores. I climbed a ladder on some neighbor's house, and so the age-old expression, wait till your father gets home. Uh-oh. Matt was excited for Dad to come home because he'd get his allowance and he'd be congratulated for how he's doing at school. Meanwhile, I'm in the doghouse here, right? So sure enough, Dad came home. Oh boy, so I got grounded for 2 weeks. I couldn't play with John Branco for 2 weeks, and we were sad. But I had to learn my lesson that blind people shouldn't be climbing ladders on roofs. It's not like you get a great view or anything from up there, but and. For myself, it was also one of those things where, Matt, got to have extra dessert for supper. I went to my room without supper, so that was good. But Dad came home and justice was dealt, and I'm still here to tell the tale, so it's good. So it didn't do me too much harm, But but it's like that with life. We look at the world around us, right? And we're kind of in a sense where when we hear. Just about all that's going on in the world right now. We yearn for justice, right? We see so much injustice around us, right? There's the poor get poorer, the rich get richer. Seems like there's so much injustice in a lot of corrupt governments through the world, and just problems like we're in some countries that are like there's just so much crime and just so much problems of breakdown of so many marriages, or there's often not due process, and things and there's just no justice in our world in so many ways, right? And we yearn for this, and there's so many people getting away with bad stuff, right? And people are trying to do good or seeming to be getting crushed or bulldozed over, and it's like, what do we do? And it's like we wish, we could fix this, right? But in a sense, the real deal is, well, wait till your father gets home. As a humanity, there will come a day when Dad is going to come home, right? We know that Jesus will return, right? And that he will bring with him, perfect justice. When he comes again, there finally will be peace on earth. There will be holiness, right? There will be justice in a good sense, right? Everything will be fair, right? And so all this shenanigans and heartaches and problems going on right now will stop. And so it's good to know that, right? It's good, and we hear about it in, the gospel today, where Jesus will set all things right in the end. And in the letter of to the Thessalonians, St. Paul is encouraging us to don't just be busybodies or be idle, doing there's work to do in the meantime before, because Dad's going to come home soon, so you better make sure we make the most of this time now, right? Or we hear from the prophet Malachi how, the arrogant and the unrighteous and all that stuff, they're going to be burned up like stubble when things heat up, right? When the judgment comes, only those who are faithful to God will stand true, right? And the sun will rise with healing in his wings, right? And this is what we yearn for. When all things will eventually be set right. So it's good to know that's ultimately the plan. There will be justice in the world and peace in the world and goodness between peoples. But in the meantime, before Dad gets home, right? What are we going to do? We have to be busy doing what's right. We have to, we don't have to wait until the end of days for things to be set right to do what's right. We can start even now, right? And so that's why we want to look at ways that we can be people of justice and peace to the best of our ability, right? In our archdiocese today and this weekend, throughout the diocese, we have a time to celebrate in this Jubilee Year of Hope, sort of a special Jubilee for the Jubilee of Social Justice, right? In September, we had the Jubilee for Catechetics, October, Jubilee for Evangelization, and now we have the Jubilee for Social Justice. And so this is a time for us to really look at, how we can be a helpful hand to others. How can we be part of the solution, not just part of the problem, right? How do we be doing the good thing? such that when Jesus does come back, we won't be trembling like me who climbed a ladder when I wasn't allowed to and didn't do my chores and being worried, but rather be like my brother Matt, who is happy to see Dad come home and to have fun with Dad and to get his allowance and do all that stuff. And he was in Dad's good books, right? So he was fine with Dad coming home. We should be fine with the second coming. We should be looking forward to it because of what Jesus will bring with him. So how do we make sure that we're making the most out of our life here now? And so we want to look at different ways that we can partner with just the good efforts that are going on of different groups and organizations to really make, lend a helping hand to those in need, to be God's, hands and feet in the world today, right? To be bringing that love and that peace. And so we were partnering in particular at Holy Trinity Parish with, the good efforts of the Knights of Columbus, with the good efforts of the Catholic Women's League, CWL, right? The good efforts of St. Vincent de Paul Society, the good efforts of Beacon House. These are 4 main partnerships that we're really trying to go alongside with their fundraisers and their efforts and their events to really either be volunteers to help out or to contribute things. This is all ways we want to help to be that sense of love in the world. We're also making inroads with this Sackville Cares kind of group of different Christian pastors and communities throughout Sackville to do things that's in the works and that's growing as well. So there's good things to partner with. There's no shortage of ways that we can help others in need. And it's important for us to do it because it is on a trajectory that sometimes we can feel like, am I on the winning team here? Are we even putting a dent into the problems? And we can say, yes, we are, because we are making a difference, we are putting a dent into it, and it's ultimately leading to Jesus, who will truly set things right. This will end well, and we just got to stick with the process and trust in the Lord. He says, with your endurance, you will save your souls. And so this is what we want to. We want to persevere and endure in this way, and not to lose hope. We can make a difference, and that's what this. We want to have hope, right? In this Jubilee year of hope, we want to have hope that we can make a difference. And it's important for us to be involved in efforts with social justice in our world. Just even making sure that, people have their basic needs met: clean water, shelter, food, care, due process, all these things. Now, this is all part of a good conversion in our hearts, of being converted to all these good causes, right? But there's a famous evangelical pastor named John Wimber, and he has mentioned that we need actually 3 conversions. Oh man, one's not enough? I need to be converted 3 times? But what he means by this is he says there's 3 conversions. There's conversion first to Christ, right? And then there's the conversion to his church. And then there's the conversion to his cause, right? And it's important that there's a flow to how these 3 things flow together. We need all 3. Kind of like if you had a stool that had 3 legs on it. You need all 3 legs. If you took one of the legs off, you'd fall over, right? So you need all 3 of these in that order to keep the flow. So on this Jubilee of Social Justice, when we look at the Christ's cause, right, we want to be converted to that cause, but we also need to make sure that it's flowing from a deeper conversion to Christ and to his church, so that when we are about his cause, it has that impact. I was thinking of myself when I was young as a bit of an analogy of this flow, where I really, enjoy playing music and playing the piano. But it started initially with just listening to music, loving music, just enjoying singing along, humming and playing. And so I had a desire to learn, and then it led to that. To now I need to actually pull out the piano lessons and actually do my scales and triads and all that stuff, and learn how to play with left hand and right hand with the right fingers and all that stuff. And it was a real, annoyance. Did you do your piano lessons today? No. Okay, I've got to keep trucking along with that. And then finally, it got to the third fun part of actually, performing and playing at church with my brother and writing songs with him and other groups, and lots of fun with music. But the cause was there at the end. It was the fun part. But the first 2 parts was just loving music first, and then actually doing the bigger part of taking the lessons and learning from those, who gone before me, of how to learn how to play the piano, and then having fun playing it. It's kind of like that with these 3 conversions for us. Yes, we want to be all about social justice, but it's best served when it's flowing from an encounter with the love and the humility and the self-donation and the example of Jesus and that connection of his love and mercy burning in our hearts in a connected way. And then from that, knowing that we're not alone, that we can do this with a team, right, with brothers and sisters, with the church, that I can contribute what I can, knowing that I'm part of something bigger than myself, that we can together make good inroads as the church, right, and really be the hands and feet of the Lord together. And then when we do his cause, serving the poor and the, clothing the naked and visiting the sick and all the various, ways that Jesus wants us to love others, it's flowing from the very heart of God. And it's done with love, done with joy, done with a certain supernatural grace backing it up so that it has even more impact. Think of the fishes and the loaves, right? They offered the little they had and they fed the thousands because God was backing it up with his miraculous power. So too, when we approach social justice, may it be served as a part of that flow from that deep conversion to Jesus and then his church and then his cause. This is really important for us to consider because we sometimes try and make shortcuts. I don't know about you, but I love shortcuts, but they don't always work. But if we start right with the cause, what do we end up getting sometimes? If it's not flowing from a conversion to Christ or his church, sure, we can do so-called good things, human rights, all these things, try and do it. But if it's divorced from sort of the heart of Jesus and kind of the teachings of the church, and that it can become sometimes morally askew, right? And so people who are often involved in just the cause without Christ and the church, it can go into areas of really supporting things like euthanasia or abortion or just ways where it can be kind of more cold and calculated of how people are served, and it can be on paper look like good things that are going on and helping humanity, but it can get often pretty divorced from the heart of what Jesus would really want, right? It can sort of fail. It can be get all the funding, but don't have the right people doing it, kind of thing, in like nursing homes and things like that. So it's all these different things. We want to honor what's being done, but it really works best and it serves humanity best when it's flowing from Christ and the church to the cause, right? Or if we skip Christ and just start with where the church, that's okay too, but that shortcut also doesn't work. We've seen how the church, just merely as an institution, without being a living stones of the mystical body of Christ on earth, if it's just that institution and that organization, we see, not rooted in holiness in Christ, then we see scandal, we've seen problems. Okay, the church is doing it and people trust, and then there's scandal and problems and letdowns. And just think of some of the issues with, residential schools or different things, and just it's sad. But it's because often we need to remember that this flow, it's, yes, the church is holy and good, but when it's flowing from that initial conversion to Christ, then the conversion to the church, then the conversion to his cause. We need all three. And if we do that, it'll really have the even better impact than we could even hope for. Right? Great things can happen when saints are at the helm, doing good things. And we are called, you and I, to be those saints. So it is important for us to look at our own hearts and say, okay, how am I doing in these areas? Do I have all three check boxes there, And this is an opportunity on this Jubilee for social justice to be sort of reinvigorated and again to want to stir up in that heart that desire to serve the poor and those in need and to lend a helping hand, to be part of the cause of Christ. But let us also make sure that we open our hearts to say, Lord, what are ways where I need to be more connected with you and your example of love and humility and of joy? And how do I connect with your love and mercy in my heart? I open my heart to you today, Lord. How can we also open our hearts to more the cause of the church, to get more behind it, right? Because the more hands that get on board and do this, the more we can do this together, rooted in prayer and in the sacraments and in our teachings that we have on human dignity and the dignity of each person, from conception to natural death, and all the dignity of workers, the dignity of, the vocation of marriage and family, all these things that we bring to it as a Catholic church, we bring, how do we get more on board with all of that stuff so that when we do now the cause, it'll really flow. So that's the desire for this Jubilee, that we cannot lose hope when we think of the truth that or wait till your father gets home. Your dad is coming home at some point, And so in the meantime, let's not be idle or busybodies, but let's be about the cause of Christ, rooted in a deep experience and conversion to Jesus himself, conversion to the church, and taking up our place in this great effort of the church on earth today, and then to be about the cause of Christ, to make sure that all peoples of all nations can experience the loving presence of God in the world, until when he does come again, all will be set right. And it's knowing that we don't want to just be, no longer part of the problem, but by God's grace, we can now be part of the solution.